This YouTube is about the Rhodes Scholar photographic trip that I recently attended. It began in San Jose, Costa Rica. We found our way to the Radisson Hotel and met the others of our 10-party group, along with our guide and our bus driver. Radisson had plenty of room for us, nice pools, and wonderful facility, but also a conference room where we had a lecture on the fundamentals of bird photography and nature photography, and an overview of what our trip would be like. This bus had room for 18 people, even though there were 10 of us, lots of room for the luggage. Here are the 10 people, both from East and West Coast of Canada and US, with a variety of photographic skills, all eager to photograph Costa Rica. The bus looks small in this photo, but was plenty big for us. We traveled from San Jose up across a fairly flat-top volcano in the cloud forest, with the destination of the La Paz waterfall, a great opportunity for us to practice shooting images of waterfalls. You can see our instructor giving some pointers to people here. From here, we headed to lunch. You can see here the owner putting out slices of bananas for the birds that would visit, giving us a chance to shoot wonderful images of hummingbirds and tanagers and other varieties. After leaving the restaurant, we saw the Cotamundi, Costa Rica's equivalent to our raccoon. After some very heavy rain, the Sarapiqui River had risen on the order of 15 feet or more, making it impossible to get to the dock for our boat. But fortunately, the water receded, and we had the opportunity to board the boat for our trip. Thanks to our guide, Andre, and the operator of the boat, we're able to spot this two-toed sloth and her baby. Of course, it took a green laser and some direction as to where to look relative to the laser spot so we could see it. Saw a variety of birds, including this kingfisher. Not an easy thing to photograph. But here you'll notice these tiny bats on the left side of this tree, maybe an inch long, the long-nosed bats. Who could have spotted it without a guide? It's a family of howler monkeys. And if you look here again, here's Mama looking out with a rather sad-looking expression. Watching these tourists in an inflatable raft, we were glad for the size of our boat. And if you wonder what this egret is looking at a few feet over his shoulder, it was this 10-foot-long juvenile crocodile. Not terribly far from where we had our boat ride, we arrived at the Ara Ambigua Lodge, a locally owned lodge. This is my room to suit one person, though it had 2 beds, and a wonderful dining room open to the outside where you could take pictures of the wildlife, and a couple different pools as well. Flying directly over the hotel was this pair of macaws, and if you looked up in the trees, you could see the racket by the howler monkeys that you would hear from 5 in the morning. Here's Mama and Baby out there harvesting some food. Even this wonderful owl butterfly sitting in the bushes nearby. Our next excursion was to Dave and Dave's Costa Rica Nature Park, a father-son owned operation where we could view lots of different local birds. They fed them bananas and attracted them for our ease of taking photographs. And in addition, they had good explanations. The younger Dave went to school at Santa Clara University, spoke perfect English, and was also quite knowledgeable about the wildlife and plants, etc., that existed around their facility. This is the Orpengula, the equivalent to our crow, but with a much more colorful tail. Then in another part of their facility, they had these heliconia plants, which they put some sweet water in it to attract many different hummingbirds. It's where National Geographic went to photograph hummingbirds. very short distance away is a very nice lodge called the Selva Verde Lodge, where we went to do some macro photography of the wonderful collection of plants and flowers. As another macro exercise, Andre, our guide, had our bus driver Cheeto go and cut down some local plants. He borrowed a table from a neighbor and made this setup where he could put some of the frogs that we would use for practicing our macro photography. Here you can see that Andre had to often chase them on the ground as they jumped away from his setup. All of that was good practice for when we went out at night with our headlamps in search of the red-eyed frog. This is a rather interesting looking frog with brilliant red eyes, and they were in a little garden just behind the hotel. It wasn't the only thing we saw. We saw bullfrogs, and then this somewhat scary looking caiman. The following morning, we took an excursion to the semi-wild macaw farm. It was a farm in the general sense of the word, with various other animals, horses, cows, but they rehabilitated the wild macaws and gave us an opportunity to photograph them in their habitat, along with other animals like monkeys. Next, we moved to another part of the farm for the experience of seeing them feed the semi-wild macaws and to give us a chance to do some macaw photography. In this field there were two troughs about 6 foot off the ground and spaced about 100 yards apart, where they were able to feed the macaws. This woman is carrying a bucket full of peanuts that she throws into this trough, and these wild macaws, they come down and start eating from the trough, giving us a good chance to take a picture of these macaws in flight. There's actually two varieties of macaws. One type is the scarlet macaw. The other type is the blue and yellow macaw. There's a third type of macaw called the great green macaw, but I didn't see any of those at this particular location. These macaws were semi-wild, had no fear of people, and as you can see, this one came to have a closer look. One even landed on my head. Here goes sugar and pineapple on this farm, and as you can see, these macaws are especially fond of their pineapple treats. They gave us a chance to see exactly how sugarcane was pressed the old-fashioned way, where we'd take these two poles on the end of a beam, and they would put the sugarcane stalks in there and press out the juice. We had a chance to sample that juice afterwards. Heavens knows how many Weight Watcher points I acquired with that taste. On day 4, after lunch, we returned to the Selva Verde Lodge to have a nature walk through this path through the jungle. Andre took us across the Sarapiqui River here on this fairly shaky bridge. It was not to everybody's taste to walk across, but quite a beautiful view as we did it. As we walked through the jungle, our guide Andre would stop and explain various features about the various plants and animals that we would see. We saw some ants that were carrying giant leaves, these leafcutter ants. This is very thick. I'd hate to think about taking a machete and going through this jungle. And then At one point he stopped and he said, "Look up in the tree." It was probably 40 feet above us. There is a keel-billed motmot. And then he said, "Look up there, you'll see a three-toed sloth with her baby." Here's our group gathered in front of a 700-year-old tree. On day 5, we left our hotel in the rainforest along the route shown here. But partway there, we found the road was closed. We had to backtrack all the way to where we started, go the more westerly route, and then follow it into the mountains to get to San Gerardo de Dota, where our new hotel in the cloud forest was located. On the way, we had a chance to stop and sample what a typical grocery store would be like in Costa Rica. Lots of different produce options, an amazing collections of wines from various parts of the world, and many other snacks. We all stocked up and headed up to the cloud forest. As you can see, it already was partially in the clouds. There were many twists and turns along the way, but Cheeto navigated even these very narrow bridges. The Sagavri Hotel was even nicer than the last hotel we stayed at in the Sarapica region. This is a room I had to myself, though it was suitable for 2 people. And not only was the inside nice, but the outside had a beautiful sitting area with a wonderful view. It was at 7,000 feet, however, and I did have some impact from the lack of oxygen. After the Costa Rican Civil War, people were encouraged to occupy land in the mountains. 2 brothers who were married to 2 sisters moved up to this piece of land where the hotel stands today. In order to claim it, though, they had to clear it of all the trees on 100 acres, all done with an axe. Even subsistence with this very simple power generator made it a difficult life, and one of the brothers and sisters moved away. The hotel had this fine dining room for us to have our meals. We gathered as a group and shared our stories and got some further advice from Andre about our photography. One of the rare birds of the cloud forest is the resplendent quetzal. It draws bird watchers from far and near and a chance to seeing it. To see the resplendent quetzal, we were told to be ready to leave on the bus at 5:15 in the morning and go a little ways up the road and a spot where the quetzals have been known to be seen. And there we would have an opportunity to look for it and hopefully photograph it. When we arrived, we found quite a few other groups, people, all with their spotting scopes and cameras trying to do just the same thing. There were 2 people in our group that managed to get a picture each of the quetzal. I saw it, but there was no chance for me to photograph it. I have to say I was a bit disappointed. All that I got was a picture of these tapirs, a bit like our wild pigs, with a snout that resembles a short version of an elephant's trunk. It was mating season for the quetzals, making them even harder to find than usual. This is what their nest looks like. Kind of high up in a tree, 4 or 5 inches diameter hole in this rotten tree. But during mating season, they don't hang out so much near their nest. The other technique for finding quetzals is to hang out near the trees that bear the fruit they eat. This is the aguacatilla tree, and these avocado-like fruit are about the size of grapes. The following day, Rhodes Scholar paid for access to this nature reserve, where we had a better chance and fewer people to compete with in looking for the quetzal. Before long, a quetzal showed up. In fact, we saw 2 quetzals. You'll notice they're about 14 inches tall, and they have a tail feather covering that's about 25 inches long. An amazing looking bird. This is the male. The female is nowhere near as attractive. On day 7, we were transported further up the mountain to a point that was the second highest point in Costa Rica, 10,700 feet, for an opportunity to do some landscape photography. from this location, it was possible to see as far west as the Pacific Ocean. Not surprisingly, there was a lot of telecommunication equipment at the top of the hill, as well as a wonderful view both east and west. For lunch, we stopped at Marian's typical restaurant, where we again had more opportunity to shoot pictures of birds, including hummingbirds, as well as to enjoy some more of the local Costa Rican food. After lunch, we went to another preserve called Batsu, where there was an opportunity to still take more pictures of local birds and hummingbirds. And in many ways, these images were not bothered by the hand of man. They would land on the trees and branches surrounding us. There's technique to shooting images of flowing water, the right use of exposure, polarizers, and more to get an image that both shows what the water looks like and captures the flow. Just before leaving the hotel in San Gerardo de Dota, I saw this violet-necked hummingbird on her nest, guarding her eggs. After leaving there, we traveled off to Paraiso de Quetal Lodge. Had a lot of collection of flowers and another fine spot to shoot pictures of hummingbirds, as well as a wonderful lunch that we were served before we left the cloud forest portion of Costa Rica. On the final leg of our trip, we stopped in the city of Cartago. In Cartago, there's a cathedral called the Basilica de Nuestra Señora de los Angeles, and inside we have an opportunity to practice some church photography. The trip wrapped up with a stop at the Wyndham Hotel near the airport, where we had another Costa Rican dinner and met to share some of our best pictures with other members of the group and to say our final farewells.